The honourable member for Carleton.
Just because the Prime Minister dressed up in racist costumes so many times he can't remember them all doesn't mean every single Liberal is a racist. Just because the Prime Minister had tried to help a corporation avoid prosecution after it stole from some of Africa's poorest people doesn't mean all Liberals are racist. Just because about a half dozen Liberal MPs who are racial minorities have complained about his treatment of them does not mean that all Liberals are racist. That is guilt by association. Why doesn't the Prime Minister opt instead for personal responsibility?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I hope that I've been clear in all of my comments, that I respect the honourable colleagues on the other side, just as I believe they respect the colleagues that are on this side and the work that we do and the people that we are. There are times in our political discourse where we see things that are abhorrent, and all I would ask is that we equally call it out. When I saw swastikas on the street, when I saw what had happened, it's time to move on. And what I would ask is, instead of trying to inflame the situation, let us de-escalate the situation. Let us work together to find a way to stop the lockdown that is happening of this city, so that citizens can move forward with their lives and any legitimate grievances can be fairly heard.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I agree. We should always call out evil symbols and the individuals who are individually responsible for putting them up. I remember a January 2018 event where the Prime Minister stared straight at a swastika and, instead of condemning it, said, "Thank you for coming, sir." We on this side condemn evil symbols whenever they are used. I do respect that member. I just wish his government would respect the thousands of people who are fighting for their livelihoods right now, who are trying to do the best to get this country back on track.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
We are in a time of global crisis, a time when so many are being adversely affected by this pandemic, and our hearts go out to every one of them. The way in which we have discourse for each other will define this moment for all of us. And to those that are peacefully protesting, I would ask that their point has been made. It's time to go home and do it a different way. That continuing to lock down this city and continuing to do what's happening, it is deeply disturbing for Canadians to see the way that this city and our symbols are being treated. And I would ask the Conservatives to also join with us to ask that they go home, and let's do this responsibly. Let's have responsible dialogue. I respect the member opposite. Let's do this the right way.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, the problem is they've shown no respect for the people. This country right now is like a raw nerve, and the Prime Minister is jumping up and down on it again and again with his inflammatory rhetoric. We're talking about people who have 14-year-old kids that are suicidal after 2 years of lockdowns. I just spoke to a waitress whose business was wiped out by lockdowns. I'm talking to truckers who've been serving food on our plates throughout this, and these are the very people, honest, hardworking, shirt off your back type of people that this Prime Minister keeps attacking.
The Honourable Government House Leader. We'll wait to start the time. Okay, very good. Please go.
Mr. Speaker, again, I encourage the member to just think about, if he's talking about de-escalating and having civil discourse, his tone and how he's approaching this issue. This is a time that is incredibly delicate. We are in a moment where there is a raw nerve that is being touched. How we talk to each other, Mr. Speaker, how we deal with one another.
I'm going to interrupt the Honourable Government House Leader and just wait till everything calms down a moment, and then I'll let him start from the top, because I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to hear it all, and I'm sure the Honourable Member from Carleton asked a question he wanted an answer to, and he wants to hear it, and we're just not hearing anything because of the noise. The Honourable Government House Leader, please proceed.
I have an instinct, and that instinct is that Canadians expect us today, when they're seeing what's happened over this weekend, to watch the dialogue in this chamber be as respectful as possible, for us to dial down our rhetoric and our language, for us to engage in one another and find an off-ramp from the escalation that has occurred, because this is not healthy. In a healthy democracy, we have respectful debates that don't involve some of the things that we've seen. And all I'm asking for is for us to engage in a constructive way. So if we could attempt in this place, in this hour, to be equal to that, I hope that we can move forward on that basis, Mr. Speaker.
Well, member for Carleton.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And, Mr. Speaker, I was out at an overpass as the truckers went by. And what I saw were cheerful, patriotic, optimistic Canadians who want their freedom back and want their livelihoods back. And they're standing up for their fellow Canadians, the 60% of families who fear they can't feed themselves. The 28-year-old kid living in mom's basement because he can't afford a home. The small businessman wiped out by endless lockdowns by incompetent politicians. These are the people that are standing up and fighting for their livelihoods and their freedom. Why won't the government finally stand with them?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I have a fundamental difference, and that is that I don't believe that my enemy is across the aisle. I believe that our enemy is this pandemic, and that our enemy is ending this pandemic and getting everybody to get vaccinated and to move forward in a way where the concerns that he's talking about, being affected by a global crisis, means that they are supported. This is a time of collective trauma. It requires us to be compassionate, to work with another, and understand that our common enemy is the virus and not one another.
Yes.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, Friday,